Hi, everyone. My name's Greg Knight.
I'm Ricardo Avila.
It's time to update our Take 2 promo, and so we've broken out our Gen Z slang machine for Ricardo once again so that he can communicate with the kids.
I hate this.
I know you do. Here we go. The first 100 episodes of our podcast were very different from what we do now.
Those episodes are Ohio AF. You're Delulu if you think anyone stands those pods. You may as well just yeet those things out of here, no cap.
You're right, but we don't want to eliminate our show history. We want to improve it by going back into the raw audio while updating our quality.
That's the vibe. Like you're going to flex those old pods with a bougie glow up. That low-key slaps, fam. Because right now they're pretty chuggy. Good Lord.
Scroll down. Okay. Listen, culture evolves over time, and our spin-off pod, Take 2, gives us the chance to go back and evolve our old podcast right along with it.
That's a bar, chat. I think this idea is pretty lit. It beats having a big yikes sitting in our archives. You gotta bling those things out with some fresh drip if you want that new subs riz, period. God, no wonder the youth are struggling. Go ahead.
So listen to Take 2 in the Popping Collars feed and hear our past selves grow before your very ears.
Yeah, these pods are bussin'. You got a dub with this, plus 1,000 aura. This idea is giving. You ate.
I wonder what would happen if we changed the slang machine to the millennial setting.
Get in, loser. We're going podcasting.
Okay, that makes sense. Hi, I'm Greg Knight.
Hey, Ryan Parker.
And this is the PC Pilgrimage Project, a Popping Collars side pod where Ryan and I attempt to walk around the world, or at least around Spain. Ryan, before we get into the episode, a quick update. You and I applied for a grant, another big grant.
And we didn't get it.
Attempting to fully fund the 3 pilgrimages that we have on our docket. I would like to let you know that we did not get the big grant. So we're still going to be plugging away at this thing.
Shocker.
Don't worry. Our ship will come in one of these days. This is one of our Camino conversation episodes where we unpack a theme around Camino walking. And, you know, Ryan and I did this a few months back and it was really great. But I started thinking we should bring in some Camino veterans to join us on these conversations, especially people who have done it more recently. And who has done it more recently than my good friend, Holly Mchale-Larsen, who's out in California. Welcome, Holly.
Thank you.
Holly has some Popping Collars bona fides, by the way, Ryan. So she is a former guest, and not only is she a former guest, she has the #1 spot on our most downloaded episode.
Wow.
The guest. She was on our Disney Princess episode. Which was hugely popular. So
we're among royalty.
Not a Disney person, but I have a lot of knowledge on Disney princess.
That's right. I have a lot of thoughts. Holly, where are you? What do you do? And then we'll talk about your Camino.
Yeah, I'm in Alameda, California, which is just right between Oakland and San Francisco. I'm a Lutheran pastor, and I serve a congregation in Oakland.
And you are a former pilgrim. When did you do your Camino?
Yeah.
How did it come together? When did you decide to do it? And where did you start?
September 15th through like October 3rd last year. That's when I flew and that's when I came back. How I decided to do this is probably not what you're hoping for a story, but okay, quick version. A good friend of mine, we were going to go to Egypt to visit our friend who does refugee work there. My friend was going with her family. And this was around February of 2024. We were conversations and figuring out what we were going to do. And we weren't, with everything going on in Palestine, we knew that we would have a safe trip, but we weren't sure if this was like the best time to go to Egypt. And so my friend, because she was going with her family, she's not a pastor, she is like, well, we're going to go to Majorca instead. And I was doing Egypt on continuing ed, and I needed a continuing ed like that got me out of Dodge. Like I needed a break, and I couldn't figure out how to sell Majorca as continuing ed. But then it made me think of the friend who was in Egypt had just done the full Camino, and I had always kind of poo-pooed the Camino as kind of a backpacker and like, you're just walking and drinking wine, like, yeah, why, yeah.
Wait, I failed to see the problem. What's
I know. Now I'm like, this is great, sleeping in a bed, all awesome. But then I decided to pivot, and because I already had kind of blocked off that time in my calendar with family in mentally, and then my husband got into a big ski accident and was out down for the count for 3 months, which I like to plan things better sometimes than go, and so I had all that time to kind of plan and think about. So it kind of got me through that time. And then by the time I went on the Camino, it really was a time of silence or just gratitude. I was just grateful. So it was a really great time to go. I went with no expectations, and I started in Pomfadara, and I did 10 days, which included Samos.
Oh, Samos Monastery.
Samos, yeah. I decided. I mean, I had the time, so I popped in there too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was actually my favorite day of walking. I think I texted you that. I was like, I loved that day. Like leaving when you're down from the mountain and you're just walking through these pretty hills and country roads. It's great.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Well, Holly, thank you for joining us. And that actually is a perfect segue into what our topic is for this conversation, which is hitting the pause button on life. And in order to do a pilgrimage, right?
I would like to use the phrase "the luxury of time."
Luxury,
because this is a loaded conversation, and I want to pick your brain, both of you, when I say that phrase, because we know that the Camino traditionally is not a luxurious experience, but there is something. What I value the most is time.
Yeah, it's a luxury.
And I've recently started a new job that has me at an office 8-ish hours a day. Not every day. Like there's a lot of travel and some cool stuff with the job, quite frankly, but there's still that component to it. And that is time is a luxury. So I want to hear some of that too. Not to jump in, Greg, but I just want to kind of keep that for.
No, 1,000%. In our conversations that we've been having and the interviews that we've been doing, there's this real balance that's been happening, right? Where it's like, this is not a vacation. It's a pilgrimage. Walking with intention is one of the things that we talked about. But it is a privilege to be able to fly to Spain, walk for a month, or in Holly's case, 10 days, and have this experience. And that's the tension, I think, with the conversation that we're going to have. I want to structure our conversation the same way that we did when we talked about, the commercialism of the Camino, which is what's the physical nature of it, what's the mental nature of it, what's the spiritual. So just from a physical standpoint, I think that's what you're talking about, Ryan. What are those elements of privilege that go into being able to put your real life on hold in order to do this? And is there a differentiation between your real life and your Camino life? Is there like a line there, I guess?
Was that a question?
Holly. Go. You're the guest. People heard us.
Yeah. Because it was 15 days, and I knew that I did not have the time to do the full Francis, and I wanted to start with the Francis because I haven't done it before, and as a single woman too, get the lay of the land. And there was also kind of guilt walking. A little, when you I didn't start from the beginning. I only did a third, like less than a third. But that's all I had. And also from the United States, it's still a lot of time to be able to take away, which I think is why most people who do it are either retired or just out of high school or they're in transitional time periods. I had my husband's guilt. So I got that. I have a congregation that said, yes, use your continuing ed this way. And we have an intern, a vicar. You can, the last year seminary student who's there 24 hours. Yeah. But he's quite kind of full time. So it kind of lined up.
one of the real gifts, we had that interview with the guys from the I'll Push You documentary, right? And that great conversation about how this journey is open for everybody. We say that, but then there's also this element of it's open for everybody who can take a month off of work or who can take an extended period of time
maybe that
away
sort of
from
creates a little bit of
their
anxiety,
everyday
but,
responsibilities.
I suppose everybody has things they have to cope with in their day-to-day life, and sometimes you kind of have to plan ahead and get all those bedded down before you can be away for an extended period. So I run my own business, which is good and bad. It's hard for me to just leave the business for 2 years. So I actually have to give everybody about a year's notice and let them know, on this date I'm going to be away, and we start preparing like who's going to cover for different things and what will happen, because I don't want calls while I'm away. So there's a whole preparatory period that has to take place there. And then, of course, as the departure time comes, I'm chatting to people and like, everything okay? You sure you got this in hand, and how you're going to deal with that? But I'm very lucky. I have a great team around me, and so I'm totally confident. I only mention that because that's a big niggle in the back of my mind. Have I got everybody ready for me being away for so long? Then of course, you have the same thing on the family side. So how do I put this? I don't have a family who are great at sort of DIY and things like that. So I've been doing household chores for the last couple of weeks. You would not believe what we've been going through, getting possums out of the roof, rehoming stray cats, fixing up stuff around the house because I don't want anything going wrong while I'm away, and I don't want people to have to deal with stuff. And then even this morning we had a final sort of walk around, if something happens with this, turn this tap off and call a plumber. And if something happens here, turn that off. But all of that I think is important. If you live with other people and if you have responsibilities, you need to make sure that people can cope while you're away.
Now you're starting to limit the pool pretty significantly.
And I had, I'd saved up my continuing ed a little bit and had extra, because I knew that I'm kind of a light sleeper. I'm also in my 40s, so I did not, and I just didn't want to run into like a naked man in the bathroom.
Well,
so,
it's Europe.
So. Fine, but I just so these were, which so then like I had also the money to be able to pay for it too.
Yeah,
it's not a huge cost, but the flight and all that, it adds up.
Here's a question for you, Ryan. When you were planning your Camino and you were planning to do it and you were talking to other people in your life about it, like, hey, we're going to go walk a trail for a month. Like, did people understand what you were talking about? Did they think it was like, that's a weird vacation? Like, how did non-religious people encounter that conversation?
I think I found more surprise and shock from our religious friends than I did our non-religious friends, because this is the context that Amy and I, everybody that's listened to other episodes know this. We took a year off in 2012 and traveled around the world. So this was just like kind of small fry compared to that. But my Catholic friends were like, why are you doing this? You're not even Catholic. I'm Catholic and I wouldn't even do it. Or, I think a lot of people were like, oh, well, there they go again. It's just another long trip. And then, of course, the people that we knew about it were like, oh, I would love to do that if life would ever allow, But we've talked about this before, about travel and big trips like this, kind of pilgrimages or long time away from home. That's been the thing that's helped us mark time. And I think for people who are listening to this, I would encourage people to look for those transitional moments in their life and to use that as a potential opportunity. Again, if you can afford to with time and resources, to take a trip like this, to say, like, I'm in between jobs. Maybe I need to take a breath. Maybe I won't go to the beach for a week. Maybe I'll go walk for a week.
Yeah.
Right. Because it doesn't have to be all or nothing. And like, I'm not going to poo-poo anybody's Camino because it wasn't the whole 500 miles in one go. I can't imagine the majority of people who participate in the Camino do that. I'm sure it's a bit more piecemeal. It's like that. I have a buddy that's slowly walking the AT, over many, many years. So it's just a matter of getting yourself in that intention of like, well, I'm going to not go lay on a beach. I'm going to go have a walk.
We were meeting a guy from Florida. His name, Vincent. Do you know him? He's a yoga teacher.
Yeah, I know.
He does not come off as a yoga teacher, but he is. And it was the first. It was like halfway through mine, and it's when I heard, maybe not less than halfway. It was the day that climbed the big mountain. But the shell, that there's 5 paths, and they all lead to Santiago, meaning like we all have our own different walk.
Mhm.
And I thought that was just really helpful.
When I did my Camino, I remember being out there and getting through and when you're in the experience, it feels, I mean, that is your experience. That is your world. When you're physically over there, you're kind of in it, and it kind of creates this perception that like whatever magic or whatever energy exists with the Camino, it lives over there.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of the work, and we can probably talk about this when we get to the spiritual end, but I think a lot of the work of Camino and pilgrimage in general is trying to figure out how you get that experience back here
Mhm.
into your regular life, you know? And I think that that's hard because I think a lot of the perception is just, well, if I'm gonna experience it, I've got to go over there to get it.
And what I noticed in being with people over there, I would structure my mornings. I'd get up a little early, and so I'd have a couple hours by myself walking, where I would be singing out loud, and then I would talk to people, and then at the end of the day, listen to stories because that's when I was just. But I noticed in talking to everyone, kind of, you can't separate home. Like you
Yeah.
bring it with you. I remember thinking, like, what am I going to think about for 8 hours? And it's amazing what you all of a sudden are working out, or just memory, or going through the head.
I just saw this. I'd seen it on Apple TV because there was a moment where we almost worked on it. But are you guys familiar with the play "Come From Away," the
Oh, I've heard
musical?
of it.
Which, if you have Apple TV, I would say let's just wrap this conversation up so you can go watch the musical on that because it's that good. But it's this experience it's based on a true story of what happened on 9/11 when North American airspace, well, at least airspace over the US, was shut down, and all what do you do with all the incoming flights from Europe and other places?
Yeah.
They were redirected to Gander, Newfoundland, of a town of about 7,000 people, suddenly ballooned to like 17,000 people, and they had like 38 flights landed in this airport, and they had to like people stayed on the plane for like 14 to 18 hours. Everybody had cell phones. You're trying to figure out what happened, all this, and they finally realized like we're gonna have to deplane all these passengers, and they're going to have to stay here for we don't know how long. It ended up being for most people like 5 days, and they were welcomed with open arms in Gander, and they stayed in people's houses and churches and schools, and they fed them and didn't charge any money.
Wow.
And then there's a musical about it. It's fantastic. But I think about that experience, which feels a little bit like a pilgrimage, if you think about it, kind of unexpected, and you're encountering people that you would not know in any other capacity, radical hospitality, shared stories, and obviously in the midst of a crisis. I don't want to ignore that. But how do you take that away?
Mm-hmm.
And what do those people's lives look like after that? And, so yeah, I think you're right that those kind of experiences, the Camino is kind of like an in-between space.
Yeah.
And what do you do with that?
I think that's a good segue into sort of the mental work of detachment. How did you experience that separation of just sort of, this is my life now. I'm waking up and walking. And when you had thoughts of home, like how did that square in your head?
I don't know, that it was just a really weird time for us because, my dad had died earlier in the year. Amy had been in the midst of wrapping up grad school at UCLA. And it was like, can we just breathe? Like, can we and that was part of the reason that we went. I've said this, a dozen times, but I think we were ready for that detachment, quite frankly. And it was an opportunity for us to kind of reconnect after all that we had been through, or to process all that. And then we weren't sure what was on the horizon either for Amy professionally, where we were going to be or what we were doing. So there was a lot of conversation about that. So I think for us, we were ready to detach, but we kept a thread. I think this is part of what you're talking about, Holly. I'd be interested to hear your experience too, especially as a pastor. I was like, well, do we unplug completely?
Yeah.
And turn off all the phones and all the devices and all that stuff. And we talked intentionally about that. And then we had decided, you know what, we'll keep our phone and we'll make one social post a day. And then I realized real quick after we started that process, like we would post 10 photos on my Instagram account, and that was it. And the responses we started getting from people emails and texts when we would check at night was like, thank you for sharing this journey because I'll never be able to go. This is really cool. Like, we're supporting you. And that was really special. If I went again, I probably would totally unplug, to be quite honest with you. But yeah, Holly, how do you think about all this?
So like I'll go home life and then I'll go work church life. Home life, like the benefit was it was 10 hours ahead. And my kids they were beginning of freshman year and beginning of sophomore year, but I could really do a little bit of parenting. So we would do check-ins, but at the beginning and end of each day. But that's it. The work one, right before I left, they're all my favorite parishioners, all of them. But this one was very, very special. And she's just a hoot and a holler. But she, right before I left, she had a stomach problem for like 2 months. Finally went to the doctor, found out it was pancreatic cancer. In her 60s. And so I saw her right before I got on the plane, and I knew that was going to be my last time. I just like knew it. She knew it. And there's, when younger in seminary, I would have been like, oh, I should stay. But like, no, I can't. What am I going to do? Right. So I got on the plane, and then in Samos, I keep singing John Stamos. I don't think that's the right, but in the monastery there, right before walking into, I found out that she had died. I had kind of checked in with her sister, just like loosely. So that was, and the time difference, what it allowed me to do was able to kind of grieve, actually, which I don't ever really get to do as a pastor. Just we're sitting in the church crying for her, it's normally months later that I cry for parishioners. But then I had to swing into planning a funeral at like 3 a.m. Not planning it, was still months off, but like scheduling it at 3 a.m. Mm-hmm. And then I would post videos for my community, like a little bit about the trip and why I was thinking about Lynn, that's her name. But because I missed them, like all of a sudden missed them that we weren't sharing this.
Yeah.
But I was really aware of, I don't have this time again. Like I might go, but like I need this time. And I'm going to show you that I'm present. But I didn't, it was just beautiful. It really beautiful. And I felt like they were kind of part of my Camino, kind of because she died. Like as I kind of filter this all out now. Yeah, I had hoped to have turned that phone off and not, but that had to happen. And
that's the thing, right? Like when it comes to professional ministry, your job is the lives of other people. I mean, it's hard to totally detach. It's not like you're an accountant, who's like, done with tax season or something, it's like,
and it wasn't like I was doing really pastoral care. It was like, okay, does this date work? Does this big, like that kind of stuff. And then going back to sleep at 4 a.m. just because of the time change. But yeah.
So I had a recurring dream while I was in Spain. I've never had it since. Like I only ever had it while I was over there. And it was that I would wake up wherever I was, at whatever albergue I was staying in. I would wake up the next morning. I would take a taxi to the like Madrid airport or something, and I would fly back to America to like take care of like a simple job. Maybe like plunging a toilet, or I don't know, like a simple job, changing a light bulb, something like that. And then like once I got back and I started doing that job, I would do like something else and I would do something else. And then eventually I would start to think to myself, wait a second, I was doing something. I think I was walking in Spain. Like, I think I should go back there and like finish that at some point. And then I would wake up in the albergue and I would be like, oh, yeah, that's where I am. There was a while there where it was like every night for like a good solid like 2 weeks.
You couldn't even unplug in your sleep.
Yeah, I would have that same dream every night.
That's interesting. Mm-hmm.
So you're one of the ones, Mal, who's talked about homesickness. Tell us about why you feel homesick, even though you seem to be having a great time.
Yeah, so I've like had a really fun time, but then like during the downtimes, which like Larissa and like the others will like talk about in a minute, like when we get to the hostel, we have a couple hours of like downtime, and it's just like it can be lonely at points, like if you're not around people. And I just have been like missing my family, my mom and my dad, and then like my boyfriend and his family. And so if you're watching, hey, miss you guys. but it's just been like hard. And I finally called my boyfriend for the first time like this entire trip like 2 days ago, which is like a long time of not speaking to him on the phone. And so it was kind of like hard, and I cried, and Jeremiah hugged me because at first I got like scared because it said like call failed, and I was like, oh my gosh. But then it finally like it picked up and I was able to talk with him, but then I cried when we hung up, and that's when I hugged Jeremiah. But it's definitely been like hard to be away from like the people that I spend a lot of time with, just because of like it's a new environment and I want to be experiencing it with them. But then also like I just don't get to talk to them as much because we're busy. But then during that downtime, it's like maybe like morning where they are, or they're like in school, or they're like at work, so I can't talk to them until like it's midnight here and I'm ready for bed. And so that's been hard.
But yeah, it's this divided mind. It's this idea of like, you can try to unplug. Like, I think it's something about the human brain. Like, you can try to unplug, but like, you're only going to go so far. You know, eventually the waves of who you really are and what your life really is going to like start to wash back over you.
We're currently planning a vacation, as we were talking about earlier, Greg, and like I'm talking to my wife is like, I think I'm going to unplug on this one. Finally, automatic email, and none of the work that I do is nearly as important as pastoring a church. But it's like the idea of like, well, do I really want to unplug? Like maybe I could check the email like once a day while I'm there, or like every other day. No, just turn it all off. But it's that tension of like, where can you leave the work behind, you know, family. Like I just turn my phone off. No, but what if something happens to my family? Well, whatever. It's just that kind of tension of whenever you go away from your house and your routine, like in what way do you go? You know, how free are you?
Well, it's like the old summer camp days, you know, like when you would go away and it was like you were gone. You know, like like back in the 90s or something, like you had no contact with your family. Maybe if you were out there long enough, you could send a postcard, but it's like, no, you were totally out. Yeah, it's very different now. It's so funny. I just heard Seth Meyers on Mark Maron's podcast talk about he lost his phone on a trip. Like his phone fell out of his pocket and into like the ocean or something. Like it was gone. And he's like, that was the best vacation day I've ever had in my life. It's like, yeah, probably.
So I have a question. I don't know if I'm steering us in the wrong direction or taking the next step, but Holly, what, in terms of preparation, how did you set intentions for yourself? Did you research the Camino? Did you read anything? And if so, like what? And then the follow-up question to that is like, what surprised you about your experience on the Camino?
I mean, I walked, but not much. Like I really didn't. But I think that actually got me more in the headspace of like, I mean, the longest I walked was like maybe 2 hours, but I would try to do that several times a week. But I like to research stuff. So that kind of got me there. I did not do the history, which once I got to Spain, I just remember being in my hostel in Madrid, like, oh, I should probably know a little bit more about that fascism time period. Let's learn. What surprised me though, my intention was to walk with joy and gratitude. And I just did that, just like out of nowhere. And each day I kind of reflected on a different part of my life, like different time periods, and kind of thanked God and for those who during that, and like, what did I learn about myself? But I hadn't prepared that that's what I was going to do. I just remember walking down the hill in Pomfrida, leaving my little hostel, going down as I'm walking out of town, like, maybe I should let's think about when I was a child. And then that's how it just went from there. The preparing was knowing the route, going on the different Facebook pages, talking a little bit to people. What I didn't prepare myself for was the other end of the hostels. What are they called again?
Albergues.
I think they're way more social. I had some social time on the trail. There were some towns that were more social than other, ran into people that I had gotten to know, had dinner with them. But there were also some times where I didn't have another person there. And I also had a lot of meals by myself. So the quiet of the Camino, even in like the last 100 where there was a lot of people, it was still, sometimes I felt like alone.
Yeah, I think that's a great point about, I don't know if we've said this before, Greg, but like I'm a 7 and an extrovert. The Camino is my heaven. Amy is not. She is neither one of those things. So that's, that's actually something to think about though, for people who are like very conscious about personality types and where you get your energy and all that. Like you need to prepare for that. You need to think about where am I going to find how am I going to recharge if the social side is a challenge for me, or if it's quiet, how am I going to find community and people to engage with and things like that.
Well, this is a great way to talk about the last part, which is like the spiritual gifts of unplugging. When you did find yourself alone, or thinking about gratitude and all of that stuff, Holly, like I assume that because this was part of your continuing ed, you were going to come back with stories for your congregation. How would you communicate that to your congregation? Like what that time did for you?
They didn't expect me to report back. They did I hope you had a nice vacation. I'm like,
vacation.
Okay. Which tells you
naked men in bathrooms, not a vacation.
They're very trustworthy. They're really trustworthy, kind of like with my time. I explained it to my congregation, and actually some people on the walk. For me, as a pastor, it's hard for me to take time with God and to refill myself. So that was what I said. I needed this time to just bask in God's goodness. And so what they did know, even though we didn't talk about it, I came back more grounded. And so they saw the benefits of that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate that because mine is sort of similar. I remember when I came back, folks were like, well, why did you do it? I mean, that was a lot of the question. And that was the question that I was asking myself a lot of the time that I was out there. It's like, why am I doing this? This is really weird. This is a weird thing to do.
Well, and people ask you that question too when you're out walking. Like, why are you doing it?
Yeah. And it's so funny. When I was out there, I don't think that I had a good answer. When I got back, I had a better answer, which was I feel more balanced.
That's good.
I was so like way too far skewed to the side of like, oh, I've just got to work really hard and I've just got to like work and work and work. And like, that's my identity now is like, doing the job. And I got so far away from like the vocation, like the call of like, why am I doing all of this work? Like, what's the big picture? And when I came back from the Camino, I was able to better articulate like, no, I have this larger call that I need to keep my eye on, and I need to work towards that.
Yeah.
Not just work for work's sake. I don't know, and it's weird because I don't know that I could have articulated that without taking a month to really think about it.
Your life becomes so much simpler. You're happier with less, and the stress, well, it just melts away. It's so welcoming. And being part of the Camino community brings you lifelong friendships and good times by the bucket load. But you wave off the last of your Camino family and say goodbye to that stress-free life you've been living. You're back home, and the loss of this amazing Camino life and the people you've bonded and walked with every day are gone. And this hits hard. Congratulations, you've just been struck down with the Camino blues.
I mean, for people who do the work that you guys do, I mean, I don't know how you do it without it. And like, I know how hard it is to bake that into your day to day when, like, Greg, you've already joked about being a plumber or somebody died and I've got to plan a funeral and like just everything is, it's a lot.
Well, and there's also for me, because I know that's part of the job and that's what like people picture on also on TV shows. That's what it looks like pastors are always. This is just like a lot of my own junk about to be thrown on here. But, you're the sitting around, it feels like you're doing nothing. So it's hard to also bake that into the day-to-day job, claim that time, which I think I've been working a little bit more on that since coming back.
So let me ask you this, Ryan, because you were saying before, like you were walking at a very pivotal time in your life. And you've referenced before, like, the loss of your father and like this trip coming sort of on the heels of that. Did you think of, your Camino experience as like almost like a therapeutic experience, like an opportunity to go deeper in yourself, but also go deeper outside of the context of like normal everyday life?
Yeah, how do you mean the second part? Because yeah, the first for sure.
Well,
Like,
I sometimes, and I guess that was probably more of like a leading the witness question. I feel like sometimes it's hard for me to see the forest for the trees when I'm in the daily grind.
Hmm.
And I wonder if like removing yourself from the country allowed you to think deeper about what you were going through while you were on the trail.
yeah, I just think, I mean, I remember thinking about like, and it was, again, it was a real luxury of time was the luxury for me. I mean, we were married with no kids. You know, we had saved a little bit of money. I don't know that we would have processed things well, we wouldn't have. We wouldn't have processed things quite the same way had we just stayed in LA or gone somewhere for a week and, you know, Amy's off to the next job. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but when we came back from the Camino for a week and then we flew to Japan to see her brother for about 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. So we were in a really unique position because Amy was always going to be between jobs. So when she graduated, she ended one job, and I'm going to put my new degree to work at another job. And I just happened to be working with a guy that was like, look, if you need to take some time, man, like take it. So that was just yeah. I mean, I remember on the Camino, there were a couple days where I would just put headphones on and walk and listen to music that my dad liked and just like think about him. And like, I wouldn't have done that outside of that at all. And I think those were my most emotional times on the Camino, even now thinking about it. But like, I don't know that I would have had that in any other context.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Ryan, I have a question because I walk by myself and I'm contemplating. Well, I'm going to do it again because I want to actually finish this out. But wondering, inviting people to go with me or by myself because, as I said, there's the loneliness factor, but there was also the wonderful solitude. And you're married with Amy, but even so, like, how did you figure out the?
There were a couple of days where she was like, "You need to pick it up. I need you to get down the way. I need some alone time."
Okay.
Yeah, there were days where we almost felt that I was kind of anticipating your question. Like in traveling, you're kind of having to think about how you're going to schedule your experience with another person or a group of people. I mean, Greg's, for God's sakes, like taking a bunch of kids.
I have no idea how you do a group.
No, but yeah, some days we'd be like, "Hey, you mind if we just take a breather? Like we'll kind of go at our own pace or a different pace."
Because you know where you're going to end up that like at night. Yeah.
And it's incredibly safe. Like it's so profoundly safe. So I felt comfortable doing that. But I'm trying not to tell the story too much, but I mean, the second night, I think it was, or the third night, Amy was like, "I don't think I can keep going."
Oh.
And I was like, "Well, I am. And you're going to figure out how to get home." And then she had a good meltdown and then woke up the next morning, put her boots on and kept walking. And on the walk, she was like, "I knew I was going to go through that." And I was like, "Well, I wish you would have told me." Because I was laid up all night going, "Well, is this how divorce happens? I don't know." Because
that would be an interesting research project.
I got to keep going. But yeah, you do need, and I think there's something to be said about being really open and upfront with, for example, if you walked with your family, like, okay, how are we going to do this? And like, because you see a lot of families, you see parents and kids, and who's going to take the kids so I can have some quiet time, or what are we going to do when the kids have a meltdown, or those kinds of things. You got to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
As an experience, and we can wrap up with this, I just think that it's so unique. This work of pilgrimage is just so unique because it feels like exactly what you said, Ryan. That word luxury of time, like it is such a privilege to be able to do it. And what you're doing is trying to live as simply as possible. It's not a vacation, but it's not a vacation. Awful.
Yeah,
exactly. It's like, it's trying to hold like these things that are kind of in tension with each other. It's like, it's real spiritual work, but it is a gift. And it's like, you're trying to sort of balance these things, I think, for this journey.
There's a real difference. I'm not doing spiritual work in Key West in 2 weeks. I can tell you that.
Right.
So there's that difference.
I went. I don't go to mass, and actually, when I go on vacation, I never go to church. Stephen, my husband, loves to go to church. I'm like, nope, not doing that. Yeah, that's right. Why?
Come on, Stephen. Nerd.
I get all the time. But I went to mass, and I don't speak Spanish, like every night that I could, and that was an interesting experience. There was also a priest that looked a lot like, and he was at a couple of the churches. He looked like the Duke in Bridgerton, the first season. So that might have been why I kept going back to. I'm not going to say.
You stuck the landing, Holly. I love it.
Last 4 places he might show up.
I love it. Holly, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. And this is also how to keep the Camino alive.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's right. And we're unpacking every single aspect we possibly can think of this thing. And so, yeah, this idea of, taking time. I remember one of our previous guests said one time, if you're thinking about pilgrimage, there's never a right time, only a right mindset. And I think that's absolutely right. Ryan, we're still on the journey. I can't remember what our next. I think we have an interview with the president of the Anglican Pilgrimage Center in Santiago next time. So that's exciting.
Yes. Maybe we can get some free accommodation.
Exactly. But what I can tell you is that we have a Kickstarter campaign going on right now. If you want to support our research project, throw us a few shekels. Just go to the poppingcollarspodcast.com website. Click on the link at the top of the page and it'll send you to our Kickstarter page, and you can send a couple of bucks our way so that we can hit our expenses and make great content. I'm starting to fall back on Ryan as my go-to log line for the trip. Imagine Anthony Bourdain goes on pilgrimage. That's what we're trying to make here. So
Ooh.
Absolutely, right?
You're really raising the bar, Greg. So I didn't compare us to Anthony Bourdain. What did you say, Holly?
Grilled octopus for breakfast.
Yeah, that's right. Grilled octopus. Throw us a few bucks and you can have that in your life. Anyway, so that's the PC Pilgrimage Project for this week. Thank you, Holly. Thank you, Ryan. We will see you next time. Take care.
Thank you.
Walk on